Good evening. And if you're just tuning in, you're listening live to 105.3 out of Mississippi FM and 107.7 out of the beautiful city of New Orleans, Louisiana FM. And this is UFO Paranormal and United Public Radio Network, as we like to just call it UPRN. I'm your host. This is the Angel Rock. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Laura Lee Potvin. I am a Canadian psychic medium, crystal Reiki energy healer, Akashic Records practitioner, spiritual teacher, and mentor, registered nurse. I'm also a budding animal communicator. I'm well versed in near-death experiences, having had one as a toddler myself, and I've studied them professionally and personally for over 40 years. And not always was looking for this, but I am extremely well versed in the paranormal. In the past house we were in, we say that we never went looking, like I say, for the paranormal. It found us. And we've actually shared some of our story on, I believe it's now, well, it was the Travel Channel. I forget who bought it. But anyways, we are on Paranormal Survivor Season 4, Episode 9. And welcome. We're glad to have you here. I'm going to give you a heads up right now. Our wonderful guest who is here, I think it was about the middle of June, and you guys absolutely loved her. She's expecting a thunderstorm. And where I am, the city I'm in is called Thunder Bay. We don't get that many thunderstorms, but we are expecting a major thunderstorm. So hopefully, things stay settled for the next almost 2 hours and you guys can enjoy along with us. So just a few housekeeping things first. If you guys like what you see, please like, share, and subscribe. Tell all your friends and family. This network's been around for 25 plus years, and when we stream multiple shows daily, 7 days a week. And when we're not streaming live, the archive server randomly picks over the last 25 plus years different shows to play. So we really do stream 24 hours a day. We have something for everybody here. I think we're almost up to 40 hosts on the network now, and we're always adding new shows. That's why it's called UFO Paranormal and United Public Radio. So it's not all paranormal on this network. We have many different aspects and shows and hosts for you. What else do I want to tell you? I got a little list because I always forget, and it is boiling hot here. I'm telling myself, don't complain because it's going to be cold here soon in Canada. If you guys want to watch, because 80% of our audience, we do broadcast to every country in the world, but it's audio only. So and both this show and my secondary show that I started with a good friend of mine, he co-hosts with me. It's called The Thing at the Foot of the Bed on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with David Hansel and myself. You know what? My brain's frying in this heat too. I almost lost my train of thought there. Anyways, what I want to say is both of these, I knew it would come back if I keep talking. Both these shows are very audience participative. We love to have what you guys have to say. I always tell my guests that I have on that I have an incredible audience. You're very kind, you're loving, you're supportive to one another, and you guys really do ask the best questions and comments and really help make it part of the show. So we appreciate that. But if you want to join into the conversation, because if you're listening live, you can't join it. So how you can do that, you can head over to UFO Paranormal and United Public Radio Network on Facebook. Our main channel is still got a strike on it, I believe, for another week. So we are streaming on our backup channel, which is UFO Gods and Extraterrestrials. I'm streaming on my YouTube channel, which is the Angel Rock with Laura Lee Potvin. I believe Megan is streaming on Third Verse on YouTube, her channel. And is it your page under Third Verse too, Megan, that you're streaming on Facebook?
My Facebook page is the Midlife Revolution page.
Okay, Megan. I know it. I usually leave my, I hate when people mispronounce my name. I've been keeping it into my head all day. We're also,
no worries.
Okay, thank you. I know, but I hate it. And you don't want to keep telling people it's not Megan, it's Megan. I always get Lorelei. It's not Lorelei or Laura Lee, it's Laura Lee. Or Lorelei or L'Oreal, I get. Anyways, we're also streaming. I will be sharing on my Facebook profile under Laura Lee Potvin. It's public, so you guys can, anybody, if you're not even on the friends list, you can comment there. We're streaming on Canada's Most Haunted. So those are some of the places you can go to leave your comments. We are streaming on my Instagram, which is under the Angel Rock. Now, they don't integrate the comments here. So the problem is I'll have to pop back and forth and try and say hello. So I promise I'm not trying to ignore you. But let me put my glasses on so I can see here. And I want to introduce you guys. If you haven't remembered Megan from June. She's amazing. And I saw her on one of my favorite true crime podcasts, Surviving the Survivor. And I went, I have to reach out to her. She was awesome in June. And I know she's going to be awesome this evening. So let me read her bio. So Megan Connor is the mother of 6 spectacular humans and a breaker of generational trauma cycles. She has spent the last 10 years overcoming the effects of child SA and other ABU, SIVE. We have to be careful on YouTube with that word, relationships and cycles. She is the host as the Midlife Revolution podcast. You guys must check her podcast out. I am telling you, I know we were talking about on the last show, incredible amounts of wisdom, helpful information that, especially if you yourself have been through some trauma, or even most of us need healing. I don't think I've run into any person that hasn't needed some kind of emotional or spiritual, even physical type healing. You got to check it out. And she's the author of I Walked Through Fire to Get Here, which was written to give support and hope to other survivors. Megan is passionate about helping people and make small changes that will make their lives better every day. And she's an incredible coach. You guys, definitely, we're going to make sure you check out her website, because I'm telling you, by the end of your 2 hours here, you're going to go, wow, how can I hear more about Megan and work with her? So we're going to be chatting all about her work and her book, her podcast, and all of it. So welcome, Megan.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back.
Oh,
it's exciting to be with
you. I got all kinds of great feedback. Let's say hi to everybody. I usually do at the beginning just so we don't miss anybody. I won't highlight them, guys. So we got Michelle Wilfong. She says, oh no, about the thunderstorms. We got Kathy Hanley Middle. Everybody saying hi to everybody. Z-Sun Dragon, or Kevin as we know him. Julie Evans, hello from the UK. And I always appreciate anybody that overseas that tunes in, because it's late over there. It is now almost 11:30. So thank you, Julie, for hanging with us. Got Connie Martins, Ed or Howie Odell. He says, hello, hello, hello. And he tips his top hat. And I'm going to give him a shout out because he really supports our network. He owns the Riff Nation Network, has incredible programming over there. Him and his incredible co-host, Rhonda, she was on here a few weeks ago on the Angel Rock. They've got the Orion Effect, and my co-host David and I have been on there quite a few times. It's a great network, and like I said, they really support all of our programming here at UPRN. So please check them out on the Riff Nation Network. We got Mish, who's all the way over in Australia. So I always tease her and say she's already living in the future because it's Tuesday morning there. Let's see. You know what, Julie? Okay, Julie, am I reading this wrong? Because I see Julia Evans on YouTube and I see Julie on Facebook. So you'll have to tell me what one to say hello properly. So Inner Peace says hi there. And Julia Evans says she loves watching. Well, we love having all of you here. So Michelle says, yes, I am in the future. Over in Australia. So how's your summer been? What's been going on with you?
I had a great summer. I was able to do some traveling with my kiddos. We took a long road trip and drove all the way up to, from Texas all the way up to California to visit my daughter and grandson.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that must have been fun.
It was great. I love road tripping. It's been in my blood since I was a kid, and it's very cathartic for me. I really enjoy just being on the road, and it helps me work out a lot of stuff. Seeing all the different scenery and the different geology in the different parts of the country. I love it. I did that.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. I was just going to say, I don't mind driving, but with my back the way it is, it's hard to sit. But go ahead, Carrie, please continue.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then my partner Samuel and I went up to Rocky Mountain National Park, and that was really life-changing for me. It was the first time that I got to observe his love of fly fishing and participate in it. I went fly fishing for the first time. Mm-hmm. We got to see some incredible wildlife and waterfalls, and it was just so healing to be out there in the world.
Isn't it? Out in nature. I know I don't get angry very often, but every now and then, yes, I will feel some anger. And the first place I head outside, unless it's 40 below, I go and head outside to sit in the peace and breathe, and it always helps. So I think we might have some of your peoples here. I think one of your mods is here, Ashley. We've got
yeah. Hi, Ashley.
We got TC. I think we said hello to Inner Peace. I just don't. Oh, we got Julie Jean Bassett. I got to give her a shout out. She's an incredible animal communicator. She's worked with me with my animals many times, and I took my animal communication course with her. She's also a phenomenal shamanic practitioner. She actually, she's worked with me. I've done some sessions with her, and holy cow, the changes were life changing. So we were talking a little bit before we went live, and feel free to pick amongst any of the topics we were talking about, because we were both saying, we're both do healing work in the fields that we do because you're a coach. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, or is anything you want to start with?
Yeah, literally every time I hang up the phone with one of my coaching clients, I just get so excited because I love connecting one-on-one with people. I love hearing about, people's personal journeys, and I love being able to hear their struggles and offer some just guidance about the way that I overcame my struggles. And I'm not trying to tell anybody what to do. I'm obviously not a mental health professional. But sometimes it just helps to have somebody else's perspective on your life because they're not stuck in the same thought loops that you are,
I always say it's easy, though, to stand from the outside looking inwards than when we try and hold up that inner mirror, right? And the other thing
Yeah.
is, even though you've been through your own tribulations and trauma and trials in your own life, you're not necessarily emotionally attached to what that person is going through. So do you find that you can be a lot more objective?
Definitely, definitely.
With
And I
empathy.
think, objective with empathy. And it's also just, I find the more and more that I talk to people, our experiences are so common.
They
They
are.
may not be exactly the same, but we all go through periods where we don't feel like we're enough. We all go through times when we have heartbreak or heartache to get over. We all go through grief. All of these emotions, are common to human beings. We are part of the human family. And so just the fact that I've been through some difficult things and I found some ways to get through them, some of my experiences are able to help other people and they know they're not alone. And, sometimes it just helps to have somebody understand your pain.
Do you find like I found this before? I'm working on setting up my first teaching course, Introduction to Spirituality or Accessing Your Spiritual Gifts. I haven't decided what I'm going to call it yet. But when I'm working with people one-on-one too, I think what is really astounding, I have found for most people, when we explain to them that, you know what, you're not in the way that no everybody feels like you do, but more or less that, you know what, believe it or not, a lot of people feel the same way. And from talking and working with a lot of people, like, somebody will feel really alone, and I must be the only one that's insecure, say as an adult or whatever, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
you start to explain that, even from the people you see on TV that you think have got it all, well, no, they're just not showing you what's going on in real life. You're very much correct that we all go through the same things. Have you found that too? Like, they're
Yeah.
astounded when the realization hits that, holy cow, I'm really not the only one.
Yeah, I think some people do have that sort of misperception. It's like, I must be the only one who feels this way about XYZ. And it's like, no, we all feel that way. We all experience grief when someone rejects us, those kinds of things. So it doesn't really matter how, rich, famous, successful, important, we all have these common human experiences. And I think that recognizing and understanding that can help people to get through it a little easier,
Mhm.
because then you think, okay, I'm not the only one who's going through this. And then the other side of it, and the reason I wrote my book was because I wanted people who were going through what I went through to know that it was possible to heal. Because when I was going through it, I felt like I was never going to feel differently. I felt like I'm always going to be depressed. I'm always going to, not enjoy my life, and I'm always going to have this heaviness about me because of what I went through. And I was so excited to find EMDR and to be able to heal from those things that I wanted other people to know that it really is possible to go on and have a really happy and successful life, even after you've been through something horrible.
Can you explain what EMDR is for people again? And people, you don't have to, if you, we've got so much we want to talk about, right? But for people that haven't been here before,
Yeah.
could you maybe just refresh a little bit about your story and, you know, what you found helpful to get you to the point that you're at today? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course. So just in the very briefest way possible, my whole life story. I was the victim of child SA from the ages of 7 to 11, and my family moved away from that place, so I was able to escape it, but I wasn't able to escape the effects of it, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a lot of struggles through my teenage years with depression and wanting to unalive myself. But my parents didn't really approve of therapy, didn't want me to go to therapy. And so it wasn't until I was much older, I really, my way of dealing with those things and processing them was to dissociate. So I just minimized my experiences. I pretended like they weren't that bad. And I even kind of got told by some of my family members, oh, it wasn't that bad. You'll be fine. Get over it. Mm-hmm. And not just with the SA, but with other things that happened in my life as well, you know, emotional things and whatever. So I got to the ripe old age of 35 thinking that I had a basically normal childhood, that I didn't really get along very well with my parents. And that was really basically the only thing wrong with my life. And I had a conversation with my dad that was a huge wake-up call to me. It was him acknowledging some things that had happened in the past, and him acknowledging it sort of snapped me out of my dissociation and made me realize how terrible it really was. Mm-hmm. And I fell into a really deep depression and I couldn't function. I was having panic attacks all the time. So I finally reached out for therapeutic help, and I was with a great talk therapist for about 3 years. And at the end of that, I realized that I needed to address my trauma with a trauma specialist. Otherwise, I was never going to really be a whole human being. So that's when I found EMDR, and it was a suggestion of a friend. And I actually went online and did a lot of research about it. And I was able to find a video on YouTube of a clinician doing an EMDR session live with another EMDR clinician. Mm-hmm. And once I saw kind of the process of it, I was like, well, this might work. So I decided to try it. It stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And what happens in this session is that you either watch a light bar go across your screen, or you hold electronic pulsers that kind of tap in your hands off and on. So it mimics what happens during REM sleep when your eyes are going back and forth. So it literally carves new neural pathways in your brain, and it separates the traumatic experience from the negative emotions. Okay. So now you can remember the experience and you can talk about it without it affecting you negatively emotionally. And that's what has enabled me this whole time to be able to talk about my experiences, but I don't feel anything negative about myself or about the experience. I'm just able to say that it happened. And I have, through EMDR, installed new beliefs in my head about myself, because what happens when we experience something traumatic, it's not the event that's the problem. The problem is that we develop a negative belief about ourselves as a result of the event. So in other words, if we get overpowered somehow, we then believe that we're powerless. And then we carry that belief with us throughout our lives, and it affects all of the decisions that we make and all of the relationships that we have. So you have to be able to train your brain to believe something differently about yourself. So at the end of the session is always an installing a positive belief that you have about yourself. And it's literally just the opposite thing. I believe I'm powerful. The difference between that and talk therapy is you can say I'm powerful 100,000 times, but if you don't have a neural pathway to that thought and really believe it, it's not going to stick with you. So a lot of times I left my EMDR sessions feeling like a freaking rock star, because like all of a sudden I realized something about myself that I knew all along, but it was buried under these layers of trauma.
That's interesting.
Sessions.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say feeling really emotionally drained because it is really taxing to go through it.
I can, sorry, and I most people know, but I forgot to tell you before we go live, never mind with the weather and your weather, it'll seem like there's a pause. So I apologize. You don't have to stop. I'll realize you're talking and stop. It just seemed like there was a pause.
Yeah.
I had something called Psych K, and Psych K can involve trying to reprogram different neural pathways, but you're using your eyes and movement. I know you probably know what it is. I did have a breakthrough with the fact that with my back injury, I hadn't felt my foot in 30 years, and I'm starting to get some feeling back in it. So it starts to work, but I'm very interested in trying this out. And I want to mention that there was somebody that I've had on here, for people that have been to the show before, Chris Laterreur, who claims to be one of the boys of Montauk, and where the series Stranger Things was actually based on some of his experiences and the other children that were, it's pretty bad. His book that he wrote, he published, and it got banned from Amazon immediately. Not only is he banned from Amazon, he is banned from ever opening an account even on Amazon to shop anywhere in the world.
Wow.
So we know that there's and quite a bit in this book. And I think it's Connie Martins that's in the chat. She had shared that she had actually, in one of the shows, she had read the book, but she had to take her time with it because there was a lot. But the reason I bring it up, I know he watched this episode the last time you were on and was very interested in finding out more about the EMDR. I had to think about the initials for a minute.
Yeah.
So other people I wanted to share because they're all supporting it as well. And they're saying, Michelle Wilfong, I have a friend, she says, trying the EMDR therapy. She believes it will help with her trauma. And Julia says, when I was working, our psychologist used it with clients with good outcomes. So do you know how it was discovered at all? I'm just curious.
Yes, the person who discovered it, oddly enough, was experiencing some really negative feelings, and she decided to take a walk in the woods. And as she was walking, she was looking at the birds. She was trying to find the birds in the trees as she would hear them sing, and she would look for them. And she realized, and she was thinking about this difficulty she was having as she was doing that. And she realized that as she was doing it, she started to feel better about the thing that she was ruminating on. And so she developed it. She worked with some psychologists and psychiatrists, and they developed it into a modality that can be used in any therapy practice. And as a therapist, you can go and get certified in EMDR training.
Oh, you can? Okay. Yeah, it makes sense to me with my nursing background and knowing of what the brain is about. And I agree wholeheartedly with you. You know, in the buzzword of the light worker field, I guess I could be classified in being in it. You know, affirmations can work, but they take a long time. And then again, if you've really got a deep-seated belief, you know, it's almost like trying to put a Band-Aid over top of it. To me, you got to get to the root of the problem because the brain is so pliable. Our human bodies are incredible. And to be able to create new neural pathways, like I could see why you said it's so draining, but what a high to end it on. Basically, you're like you said, you feel like a rock star by the end of it, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it's, it makes a lot of sense the way that the brain works and retrains itself to heal itself. And this is one of the reasons why it's easy to understand why emotional abuse is so damaging, because it's a traumatic event where you are believing something negative about yourself, and that belief is being reinforced by the person who is emotionally abusing you, right? And so that's why it's so difficult to overcome negative beliefs about ourselves when they're instilled by a caregiver or someone that we trust.
Especially as children too, because we know the human brain isn't really fully formed till you're about 25 to 27. But I know, especially from the ages of 8 days old, almost to the age of 7, that brain is like a sponge. So everything you think your kids aren't hearing and they're in earshot, or they absorb everything. So I could just see, you know, never mind with the emotional trauma. and then how many times it happens. Or like in my own case, I was blamed for it, that it was my fault that I had been
Right.
essayed at 4 years of age, right? So it's really deep seated in there. So it's nice to know, like some people are saying too, that it's used for addiction as well. And it almost sounds like it should be something really commonplace, wouldn't you think? Because there's a lot of people who could benefit from it, it sounds like.
Yeah, I hope it becomes more common. And what you were saying about, between the ages of 0 to 7, your brain is a sponge. Also, we are genetically hardwired to crave connection from our parent, from our mothers particularly, but also from our father. And so when the trauma comes from them, it's especially damaging, because then our psyche is at war with our
Yeah,
genetics,
that's where
and
mine
it
came
causes
from.
all kinds of problems in our bodies. But what I wanted to say is the clinician that I worked with
Would you say health
actually
problems?
started, yeah, well, it causes all kinds of problems in our bodies because our genetics and our emotions are fighting with each other.
I just know
But
that. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. I thought there was a pause again. So sorry, guys. Bad weather. Go ahead.
The clinician that I worked with actually got started in the Air Force, and it was basically his job to take soldiers who had been traumatized and quickly fix them up so they could go back out again. And he eventually got out of that, but just to illustrate how effective it is, that's basically what happened. Is he was working with soldiers who had PTSD.
I don't think I've run into a soldier that hasn't had PTSD, if they have seen the front lines, especially. So, great group of people to start with. Absolutely. The reason why I asked you is because for myself, what started me on my healing journey years ago was I didn't even remember, like I had blocked it out. And I've been starting, as I've started healing, that the memories are starting to become unblocked. And I knew something, I started asking questions. But what happened to me at the age of, I just turned 59. So between the ages of, well, probably about 16, I hurt my back first. But when I was just after my second child was born, like my body was in such bad shape. My liver, I was on end stage life support. I mean, in the way of nutrition, not in a ventilator.
Yeah.
They couldn't find out what was wrong with me. They ended up taking my gallbladder out because my liver enzymes, like my whole body was shutting down. And I just realized, even though I'd come from a big medical background, I'm a real believer. I'm not giving medical advice for anybody listening, but for myself and my family, you know what? We survived way back in the day. And I truly believe for myself that we weren't put here without resources. There are resources here. You just up to us to take a look, do a lot of research. And of course, I don't think I'm a doctor or anything, but I will try something natural. So for me, conventional medicine wasn't working. I wasn't getting the answers. So I started looking into homeopathy, naturopathy. And it was actually my naturopathic doctor that said to me, you know what, things are not progressing or healing the way I'm thinking it should. So what was going on in your life from childhood onwards, and then got into a bit of counseling, and that's what started it, because my body was shutting down. So that's why I asked you that.
Yeah, it was really the same with me. If I hadn't had a physical response, a physical trauma or something that was causing me panic attacks, I don't think I ever would have gone to therapy, because I was so ingrained in believing everything that my parents said.
Yeah.
And I was so trained to only do the specific things that my religion said. And what they said was, don't ever go to a therapist who is not a member of the LDS church,
Yeah.
because they have weird ideas about how to heal, and they're going to give you terrible advice that's not in line with your faith. So I never went to a counselor that was not a member of the LDS faith until I started having those terrible episodes. And it was life-changing. Like, the counselor that I saw in the LDS church was basically just someone you would go tell your problems to, and they would say, sounds like you're not praying hard enough, sounds like you need to read your scriptures more, you need to rely on the Lord more, lay your burdens at his feet and he'll take them away from you. And that never happened. So I was so
I'm sure
grateful
you did
to
many
break out of
times,
that.
right? And it never helped.
Yeah, exactly. I was such a faithful Mormon. Like I was such a good Mormon. I said my prayers day and night. I did everything I was supposed to do as a Mormon. I studied my scriptures literally religiously. I was a teacher of scripture in the church. I went to church every single Sunday. I was completely sober for the 20 years that I was active in the church. I mean, it was, I did all the faithful things and none of it did what it said it was supposed to do.
Yeah. So then you realize, like, you have to. Well, and for anybody, I have not had a panic attack, but I have looked after people, and both my boys have anxiety. My youngest has, he's an adult now, both severe autism. But, and I think their father probably, he finally, after I came back from an autism conference when we were still married, and I was listening to Tony Atwood, who was one of the world's at the time leading authorities on, it's no longer called Asperger's, it's called high functioning autism for people listening. But when I was listening to him, there's like all kinds, hundreds of people in the room, and most of us didn't have a dry eye in the room. And I don't cry very easily, but it was like the man had been a fly on the wall, yeah, at my house.
Mm.
And so I came back saying to my husband at the time, I think you might be under the autism spectrum. He goes, oh yeah, I've known that for a long time. Oh, were you going to tell me? So there's a lot of anxieties where I'm going with that. So, and my eldest, not in front of me, but has had some panic attacks, and I've seen people who have, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you could share what happens much more better than I could, but you literally feel like you're dying, don't you?
Yes, and I actually was having a panic attack in a church service at one point, and I was pregnant
Oh
with my
God.
last child, with my
Mhm.
sixth child, and I was sitting in the pew, and I just started crying, and I could not stop crying, and I didn't know why I was crying, but my heart started beating really, really fast, and I was afraid that something was wrong with the baby or the pregnancy. And so I asked my husband at the time to take me to the emergency room because I felt like I was, I felt like my heart was beating way too fast. I was sweating profusely and I couldn't really articulate what was going on. So he was asking me, "Are you okay?" And all I could get out was, "I'm," and then I couldn't think of the word. It
Oh,
was like my brain completely shut down in that trauma response. So they took me out into the lobby and I was sitting in a chair and there was a lady there who happened to be a doctor and she came and took my pulse and she said, "Yeah, her heart's racing." And I continuing to cry and cry and cry.
oh my
And
goodness.
I said, I finally was able to get out. I need to go to the hospital. And my husband was ready to pick me up and take me to the hospital. The doctor said, "It's okay. Just wait for a second. I think you're going to be okay." And she just sat with me and she kept taking my pulse and just like nodding to me that it's okay. And when it passed, I told her, I said, "I don't know what happened to me. It's like my brain just turned back on somehow." And she said, "I think you were having a panic attack." And I was like, "Oh, I never had one of
I
those
wasn't
before."
panicked about anything. Why was I having a panic attack?
I
Right?
know, and that's what I told her. I said I was sitting in church, the most supposed to be the most peaceful place in the world. Now, of course, it makes complete sense to me why I would have a panic attack in church because it was horribly unhealthy for me to be there.
Mhm.
And I experienced a lot of trauma in there, of course. And so anyway, that was just my first experience with it, but then it continued to happen more and more frequently and it started happening especially whenever I had to have interaction with my parents. I used to go to their house every single Sunday for dinner and I had to just say I can't do this anymore because every time I would go I'd have a panic attack before I went and then I would go and things would go okay and I would be like, "Why am I so worried about coming over here? It's not that big a deal." And then I would get home and I couldn't get out of bed for 2 or 3 days.
Oh.
So I was like, "Okay, it's time to do something different."
Hmm. I remember when you were on here in June and you were talking about one particular scenario that you're an accomplished pianist and you were expected to perform on command. And when you tried to stand up for yourself, if I remember correctly, that nobody was hearing or listening or respecting that you didn't want to play. Did I get that right or did I miss anything
Yeah.
with that? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right. That was totally right. My mom wanted me to play, and I think we had a guest, and it was kind of like, okay, monkey, get up and dance. And
Yeah.
I just said, it's not a good time. And
Mm-hmm.
she continued to kind of cajole me and persuade me. And I said, I really don't feel like it right now. And then she tried to make me feel guilty about it. And I just finally had to say, it is not a good time. And I
Mm-hmm.
had to get up and walk out of the room because I was feeling so incensed that she was not listening to me.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't respecting my desire to do something different than what she wanted me to do. And it was kind of like that controlling feeling I had felt my whole life, coming back all over again as a fully grown adult woman. And one of the things that was interesting, and I may have mentioned this last time, when I was talking with my therapist about my relationship with my mother, he said, I want you to close your eyes and picture yourself and your mother together. And I did. And he said, tell me what you see. And I said, my mom is young and beautiful, the most beautiful I've ever seen her. And we're standing in church together. And I'm 7 years old. And I'm wearing really dumpy, ill fitting clothes. And I feel ugly.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, the fact that when I ask you to imagine you beside your mother, the fact that you don't see yourself as an adult is a problem.
Oh, really?
See yourself in that role as a child.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, ideally, when we imagine ourselves, we close our eyes and imagine ourselves, we should imagine the smartest, best, most beautiful, oldest, aged,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, the age that you are. But when I put myself next to my mom, I saw myself as a child. And so what I had to do was go back to that child and take her in my arms and tell her all the things that she needed to hear from her mother, but never did. And
Can
that
we
was life
talk
changing
about
for
that?
me.
Sorry, yeah, it's life changing, like
Yeah.
you said. Sorry, but I was going to say, can we talk about that? Because, like I said, I do healing work with people with crystal Reiki, and then even the readings that I do, like connecting to the other side, they can be very healing, especially say a loved one has passed away and the person that's still
Yeah.
staying here has it ended on bad terms, or maybe they didn't get to say what they wanted to say, or the grief process is just so overwhelming. And so there's many reasons why I do what I do as well. And we're going to get into some of your work because I want people to hear the incredible work you are doing with your coaching business, never mind your podcast. But I guess with healing the inner child, and I've run into people who believe that there's no use for the, working with healing or working with the inner child. Would you mind talking a little bit about that? And because I'm running into all kinds of people, as I'm sure you are, a lot of people are wondering why they're here. And maybe they're not
Yeah.
happy, reflecting over the last 4.5 years. Got to be careful with that word too. I know you know that for people
Yeah.
listening.
Yeah.
And they've got a lot of questions and they're starting to look back on things and why am I not happy where I am? So I'd love to hear a little bit more about your inner child work.
Yeah. Prior to that episode of working with my inner child, I was getting ready to address the essay that happened when I was a child. And when he asked me to visualize myself, at that time, I saw myself as a little girl sitting on a swing, but I didn't have any facial features. I could see my
Ooh.
little braids on the side, but my face was completely blank. There were no eyes, there was no nose, there was no mouth. And I think that's because I felt like I was invisible and I
Yeah.
didn't have a voice. And so after we finished processing the trauma, I still saw myself in that way. And he said, okay, now I want you to take that little girl and just go and take care of her and give her whatever she needs. And when I was a little girl, what I wanted more than anything else was to be a professional figure skater.
I love that.
Because we lived
Mhm.
in South Dakota, and I remember watching the Olympics with my family, and I loved watching Michelle Kwan skate
Oh, yeah.
because she
Mhm.
always had this look on her face, like just pure joy. Like she
Joy.
was
I know, right?
so excited to be where she was
Yeah.
and doing what she was. And so I took that little me with no face and I held her again. I told her all the things she needed to hear. I told her that someone should have protected her from what happened. I told her that someone should have listened to her. And the more I started saying these things, the more I was able to see her face. The facial features became more and more pronounced. And then what I did was, and by the way, when I showed up for my my little Megan, I was dressed all in black. I was wearing leather pants, a black silk blouse, a leather jacket, and black boots. I was a badass, basically.
That's what I was picturing when you said that.
Yeah, and so
But
I
that's
just
what you needed. That's what you needed when you
it's
were
what I
a kid.
needed. I needed a warrior.
Mhm.
And so that's what I showed up as. And so I just took her by the hand. We got onto my private jet. We flew to Lillehammer, Norway,
Oh, I love it.
where I had an ice skating rink built just for her. And I took her into the ice skating rink. I gave her a beautiful, flowy, sparkly outfit and a brand new pair of white leather skates and helped her lace them up and set her off onto the ice skating rink. And so that's where she is all the time. And sometimes when I feel those old wounds come up again, I just go and visit her. And she's always either skating or there's like a little area offside of the skating rink where there's a huge library full of books where she can read anything she wants. She has big, comfy chairs to sit in. She has a giant stuffed animal bear that she can hold. And I go and bring her gifts every once in a while when I'm feeling like that little girl again. And I love it because every time I go into the skating rink, her face lights up and she comes over and hugs me and we
Oh.
have a good moment together.
Now, some people might think that sounds strange, but it's not strange. Like, for example, I have tried a bit of inner child work, but I'll be honest, I'm always honest on my show. It's the same thing with journaling. I don't like journaling. And I remember after I started the counseling, I literally filled books. And I have not great handwriting anyways, being left-handed, but the anger there's a lot of anger that needs to be processed still. And I find
Yeah.
that trying to go there and do that, I'm not quite at that state. But what I was going to share with Julie, who's in the chat, Julie Jean Bassett, we had done a shamanic practitioner session. She working with these issues, and she did confirm for me because she literally goes on like a meditative journey, and I didn't even know really what had happened. I had bits and pieces, so I knew something bad had happened, and she came back and told me. But the interesting part was you lose a piece of your soul when you go through something like that. So it was kind of similar, but not, because she said she had a hard time convincing that little girl or that piece of the soul to come back. And you can't force that piece to come back. So I love what you were talking about, regardless of what the labels are, we're going back to that time. And when I'm talking to people, I say there is no time or space on the other side. Past, present, and future is all happening at the same time. Even if we think about our minds, right? Like we start thinking about the trauma we've gone through, for example, for people listening, the brain doesn't know when we start to go into those memories about, you still get the same physical responses, the fear, all the hormones, and it's a continual cycle. But what I'm wondering, like, it's great if you can work with a practitioner to teach you how to do this, like someone like yourself. But what I wanted to ask for you, do you find that you just get in a quiet space and you go there, or do you find that you have to go into a meditation, just for people listening, if it might help them with what you find helpful?
For me personally, it works really well if I just am in a quiet space where I know I'm not going to be distracted or disturbed, and I set aside that time for myself purposely because it's part of my self-care.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that for me personally in my healing journey, I would not have known to do that or been able to do it without the help of a clinician. So I really appreciated the idea of doing that work, because now that I have that tool, I can go and apply it to other situations as well. And there have been times when I have finished a meeting that did not go the way that I wanted to at all, and I was very angry about it. And so I will just go into a meditation. I'll go back to the meeting and I'll fix all of the things that I should have done differently, or how I would have responded differently if I had been in a better frame of mind. And it's healing, and it keeps me from perseverating about those things and waking up in the middle of the night and going, oh, I should have said this, you know? So I think it's helpful for things that happen, you know, right now, real time. And it's also helpful for things in the past that you are still thinking about that didn't go the way that you wanted them to, whether they were traumatic or whether it was a regret that you had. I recently had to do this with a regret that I had. And I do think that it is really helpful. It seems to a lot of people, I think, yes, rewriting your story. I think there are a lot of people who sort of dismiss this kind of work, this kind of healing, especially inner child work, as unnecessary and sort of like spooky woo stuff that doesn't actually work. It's not actually real. Well, I mean, I think those type of people just aren't ready to yet confront that trauma lives in your body and it lives in your mind and it has to come out somehow. And if you don't do the healing work, it comes out in dysfunctional ways. It comes out in your responses to people, or physically, yes, or illnesses.
This is one of my books that I use all the time. And it's by, sorry, I'll put it right. It's called The Secret Language of Your Body by Ina Segal. And she tells her story of what she went through living very close to the Chernobyl nuclear reactor and a small child, and to the point that she was bedridden at 19. And her spine was literally twisted and it was awful. But she was also very spiritual. And with this book, the reason why I love it is she gets into a little bit about it. She teaches you how to, and there's so many different labels, but you're basically, for people out there, if you're scientific, it's your subconscious. If you're spiritual, it's your higher self. You can call it whatever it is. But she teaches you how to work with that and with colors and emotions and different things, depending on the nature of the illness or the place where it is in the body. I'm just going to pick something for people to explain it very quickly. For example, somebody's got teeth problems. Okay, so I just picked a page. It says possible contributing factors: holding on to shame, guilt, fear, anger, blame, bitterness, difficulty making empowering decisions, self-neglect, unresolved issues, and frequent self-sabotage, feeling overwhelmed and stressed, frustrated about your inability to express yourself clearly. It will give you a remedy to work with and teach you the words. It'll give you the unhealthy emotions to help starting to try to clear, and then healthier ones to help program with. And the reason I mention this is because what a beautiful thing if you're working with someone like yourself and a doctor that does this type of work, because I know you do a lot of coaching work. And like I say, you guys, anybody tuning in late, you need to check out. I know a lot of you are here from YouTube, but those of you who haven't checked out Megan's podcast, you've already done, is it one season or two? One, right?
I finished one season, yes, and I'm getting ready to, season 2 actually starts on Wednesday.
Okay. You guys need to check, if you can, check it out, because the wisdom and the teaching, the healing, I was blown away with listening to some of your episodes, but coupling it, you know, from a physical perspective, because like you say, once you start to get some tools, right? And I'm not saying this is going to cure everything, but this is something I work with people who come to me for crystal Reiki, for example. But I think it's so important. Like I tend to not like to be confrontational. I believe everybody's entitled to their own belief system. But again, Julie Jean Bassett mentions inner child work is very important shadow work, and it is. Do you ever do anything like that with shadow work too? Have you, you know, rather than asking questions, I just realized, why don't you tell us about what you do with your coaching business? I know we could sit here for hours, and I don't mean, you know, tell people some of the things if you're comfortable with it, because I think you're from the first time I heard you on Surviving the Survivor, I seen McSpunky in the chat. I go, I know that name from Surviving the Survivor. And Joel, who's the host of the podcast, kept calling you, what was he calling you? The wisdom guru and all kinds of things.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know. Modern day Socrates, I think.
That's what it was. Thank you. And after I heard you, I went, I'm getting goosebumps, and it's so hot here. I said, oh my gosh, I need to reach out to Megan, because I think you're incredible and you have so much wisdom and knowledge. And where it's coming from is it really seems to touch a lot of people's hearts for a good reason. So please tell us more about the work you're doing.
Yeah, so I started doing coaching a couple of years ago, right when I was getting my book published, and I was doing it on the side, obviously, with my other job, and now my other job has ended, and so I'm doing this full time now, which is great because it allows me a lot more time to work with people and do different things. But I've had clients, of course, you know, my main core work started with working with people who were going through traumatic events or who had been through traumatic events and just helping them in their healing journey. I almost exclusively worked with people who are also in therapy, because since I'm not a licensed mental health therapist, I can't help people actually do the trauma work, but I can help them with establishing healthier routines and with self-care and with journaling exercises and meditation and things like that. And so that was where I started in my coaching business. And since then, I've worked with people on all kinds of different things that are both related and unrelated to healing, although I think it's all related to healing. But I've worked with people helping to hire individuals for their businesses. I've worked with book, authors who are working on books. I've worked with parents who are trying to do healthier parenting strategy. I've worked with people on, of course, obviously they're healing things. And then whenever I do a podcast episode, I'll get requests from people related to that specific episode. So I did an episode, I did 2 different episodes about my journey in tidying my house, because I read Marie
You read
Kondo's
my
book.
mind. I wrote it down so I didn't forget.
Yeah, it's called The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. And when I was going through that process, I realized how much my holding on to things I didn't need anymore was related to my trauma. And I had this realization that it was part of a negative belief system that was keeping me in this thought pattern of, just in case, I'm going to hold on to this, or what if I'm going to hold on to that. And not being able to let go of clothes because I had invested money in them went back to my financial insecurity when I was a child, and all of these beliefs that I had about myself, that I didn't deserve to have nice things or new things. And yes, clutter is a trauma response. And also, I got diagnosed with ADHD, and I came to realize that having little piles of clutter around your house and always starting projects and never finishing them was part of ADHD as well. So the tidying and so the trauma and the ADHD together made my tidying problem very specifically difficult. So those 2 episodes I did about my journey, and I did my entire house decluttering things, and I got rid of probably 2 carloads of things and donated them to a local women's shelter. And so now one of my very favorite things is to help clients who need help going through that process. Because for me, already being through my healing, I was able to look at my stuck response and go, oh, it's because of this. But a lot of people get into this desire to declutter, but then they can't do it all the way because they haven't addressed the negative beliefs that they have about themselves.
I think because I've been signing up for every declutter thing lately because I hate it. And I left a house. I lost my house from our paranormal experience. Long story. And I've been here 5 years and started over all fresh. We took only what we needed, right? And had to leave. We were homeless. And thankfully, my mother-in-law took us in. But my whole point is, if I can't find stuff, like I'm a real crafter, like I love resin, I love creating every night. That's when I do my spiritual healing work with myself and connecting with my, I call them my guides, angels, the others. That's when I do my meditation, and nothing pisses me off more than if I got to go, I know where everything is, but I got to look for 2 hours because I can't find stuff. And I know it needs to be done. So I've been doing a lot of research on this lately. So that's why it was so timely when you brought this up before we went live, because I think there's a lot of people out there that are, and I've been actually questioning, do I have ADHD? Because my kid has it, my brother has it, my nephews have it. And I've been thinking, maybe that's part of it too. I don't know. My mind's going 20 miles a minute, but go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to get off on a track here. But a lot of
No,
people
you
are looking for this.
Yeah, you're right. And I think what I said to you beforehand is that, you can hire somebody to come and declutter your house for you.
Mhm.
Like you can 100% do that. But if you don't change your thoughts and your patterns and your habits around those things, it's just going to get worse again. It's going to come back and you're going to need somebody to come and do it again.
I agree.
So that's why I don't declutter for people, I declutter with them.
Mhm.
And we sit down beforehand and we have a long conversation about exactly what needs to be done. And I try to find out, what are your ideas around holding on to things? Why is it that you are, thinking about this particular thing? Why is it that it's hard for you to let go of things? And we talk about those things first before we ever start the process, so that by the time I actually get on site and we're ready to go, I can say, remember, I know you're going to have a hard time with this particular thing, but this is why. And we're going
Mhm.
to change that belief. And part of changing that belief is letting go of this thing. And I love the idea of Marie Kondo saying, asking yourself the question, does it spark joy? Because you're not asking yourself, am I going to need this someday? You're
Yeah.
not asking yourself, did I spend a lot of money on this? You're not asking yourself, do I want to pass this down to my kids? You're asking yourself if it sparks joy. And if
Mhm.
it doesn't spark joy, it needs to leave your house, because your objects that surround you are full of the energy that they carry with them. And if your mother gave you a necklace and you don't have a good relationship with your mother, that necklace carries that energy in it, right? and
Mhm.
and you cannot rest in a home that is full of negative energy.
Mm-mm.
So it's really, really important to surround yourself, because your house is the place that affects your mental health the most. It's a place that you spend the most time, and
Mhm.
it needs to be a peaceful place if you're really going to be restful, if you're really going to heal. If you're doing self-care in a home that's full of things that you hate, then you're not going to get that self-care done. So I love people awakening to that realization and saying, oh, it's not that I need 13 pairs of shoes. It's that my mom never bought shoes for me when I was a kid. And I feel bad about that. And so that's why I hold on to these shoes. It's a process and it's different for everybody as far as the thoughts go. But I promise you, we all hold on to things we don't need for the same reasons. And we all need to be in a space that is peaceful. And so those two things come together. And sometimes it's just helpful to have somebody there during the process.
To support
Um,
you.
yeah. And the other thing I will say too is that, yes, the individual has to be the one to like do most of the physical work of picking up the thing and saying, does this spark joy? But it's really helpful to have somebody there to carry away the garbage bags, to go take the things to the donation place, to go out and buy the little storage containers that you're going to need to put the stuff in when you do decide to keep it. Um, it's it's so important to have somebody help you with those other tasks so that you don't get decision fatigue and never finish the
Yes,
project.
it's overwhelming because especially
Yeah.
if you have a lot of clutter. Like Julie just shared, she said, I had an astrology reading and my north node is about your purpose. My purpose is to declutter and get organized. And she had shared she's having some of those issues as well, right? And again,
Yeah.
knows it's from a trauma response. And you're absolutely right. So the fact that, you want to get it done, but to have somebody there to help support you, and the big thing for me, actually, I didn't know you did this kind of stuff till we talked just before you went live, because I follow her name's Catherine on Do It on a Dime, I think, and she just started a 30-day decluttering challenge. She goes and helps people organize homes and stuff like that. She doesn't necessarily do it. She'll give you ideas and work with
Hmm.
you. She's not just going in there to do it and say, okay, come back home, it's done. But the thing is, I think it was her that said this, and it was just something that sparked within me. How many of us do this? We've bought something and it's a lot of money, so we don't want to throw it out. Like we go, wow, I paid good money for that. And then
Hmm.
I forget how she worded it, but she said, the money's already been spent, it's already gone. So if you know you're not going to use it, or even I like better, does this spark joy? Because it takes a lot of pressure off, right? Exactly the way you explained it. Let it go. Maybe sell
Yeah.
it, donate it. Somebody else can use it. That money's gone. It's not like it's money in the bank hanging on to this expensive item. Or I love what you
Right.
just said too. If you got a necklace from your mother and you don't get along with your mother, why are you hanging on to this thing? Get rid of it.
Yeah, and to speak to what you're saying about it's called the sunk cost fallacy, meaning like I put a lot of money into this, so I need
Yeah.
to hang on to it longer. The way to think about it is, well, what did you buy this for? For example, I bought this fan and it
Okay.
cost $100
Uh-huh.
and I never use it anymore, but it
Mhm.
cost $100, so I'm going to hang on to it. Well, you
Right.
spent the money.
Yeah.
The fan served its purpose.
Yeah.
Therefore, you got the value out of that
Yeah.
fan.
Yeah.
I was talking with a client about this the other day who has she has a shopping issue and she
Mhm.
recognizes that shopping is like dopamine for her. And
Me
so
too.
she has all these clothes
And
in
I'm
her closet
careful.
that
I like a bargain. So that's the thing, right? If it's a bargain. So now I ask
sure.
myself, do I need this? No. Keep walking.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off. I throw that in
I
there.
get you. No, it's important. But so she has all these clothes in her closet that still have the tags attached that she's never worn.
Oh,
And so
okay.
she didn't want to get rid of them, but she also didn't want to spend the time to try to sell them online because your time is really valuable and you're not going to make, the same hourly rate that you would doing your job or other things. So it's not worth it a lot of times to sell them. So what I told her is that when you bought this, the reason that you bought it was because you were soothing yourself.
Yeah.
You were doing self-care, you were trying to get a dopamine
Yeah.
hit. We know that that's
Mhm.
probably not the
That's what it
healthiest habit and we'll change it at some point.
is. Mhm.
But the fact that you spent $10 on this purse, it was a bargain, right? You bought it
Mhm.
to soothe
Yeah.
yourself
Yeah.
and you were soothed.
Mhm.
Therefore, it served its
It's
purpose and
purpose.
you can let it go now and thank it for serving its purpose in your life.
I like that. That you're right about that. That I don't know what it was about that, but to me, it really hit home. I think I come across that about you've like exactly what you said. You spent the money, it served its purpose, right? And the person I had seen it from before had said too, and again, I agree with you. That's what happens. A lot of people don't want to spend the time to sell it because it is a pain in the butt. People don't show up, or you got to
Yeah.
go somewhere, the whole bit, right? But that, maybe somebody else can use it. But I think it was the fact that the way she had worded it was, yeah, the money's already been spent. It's done. Like it's done. It served its purpose, right? And
Yeah,
hanging on to
exactly.
it. And that's where I think you've just hit the nail on such an important issue because a lot of people don't realize how many times have we run into people with no judgment in any way, shape, or form, but with addiction issues, or they keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over, expecting a different result, and it doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
It's because I've always said this, especially with my son, with the autism, dealing with the schools and stuff. They'd say, well, I don't know what happened, he just had a meltdown. No, there had to be a precipitating behavior
Right.
or something happening before. And I used to say it, and I still say it, behavior does not happen out of the blue. There is always a reason behind why somebody does it, but
Hmm.
it's getting down to why, right?
Yeah, exactly. Do you mind if I share my screen with you and I can show you a
You
couple of
do
pictures?
whatever you like. I told you this before. You know what? Megan is so respectful, everybody out there. And I've told her it's our show tonight. I'm just grateful you've chose to spend 2 hours with myself and my audience, and your audience is here. So you go for it, girl. Go ahead. You do whatever you like.
I'll share this with you because it's so satisfying. And I just did this with a friend of mine yesterday. Two she had two cabinets that she wanted decluttered. And so we just did it quickly but the result of it was so satisfying. So apparently I have to
If
open
you
this
need
in
me
a
to
new
do
window.
Can you do it? You let me know whatever. I'm
Yeah,
just going to read Debbie's comment here. Debbie Schmoly.
yeah,
Hi,
go for it.
Debbie. Haven't seen you in a while. She says, hi, Laura and all. Been listening and multitasking. So much great advice. She said, I definitely am grateful to be listening. We're grateful to have everybody here too tonight. So thank you.
Okay, I think I figured it out.
Did you? If there's
I
something I
think
can do, let
so.
me know. I
There
don't
we
do
go. Yeah.
I don't do it the right way. Oh, I see you. Yep. There you go.
So
go.
these are all the pictures of me decluttering these two cabinets, but I'll just show you the before and after.
Oh, I
So
can see already. Holy cow.
if it'll load properly. It's a video, so it's not loading. But I'll show you the before.
Here, I can add it. Sarah, I added it to the stage for us, I think.
There's the before, just these two little cabinets right there. That's all we did. Then, and then here's the after.
Oh, wow. I didn't think that cabinet looked that bad before, actually, but now that I see the
Isn't that
difference,
amazing?
wow. Wow.
And we got rid of a ton of stuff. We got rid of about half a big garbage bag full of stuff that she really didn't need. There was nothing in there that you know, she didn't really know exactly what was in the cabinet. And so when we took it out and put it all out on the table, she could see everything. And she's like, oh my gosh, there were literally 12 pairs of glasses in that cabinet.
Oh, wow.
She didn't know she had 12 pairs of glasses in there, you know? And so she picked the 2 or 3 pairs that she needed to hang on to. We got rid of the rest. And so it's just the kind of thing where it's out of sight, out of mind. And that's a big part of it, is taking it out, putting it all out where you can see everything. And then some of it is really easy to just toss. Some of it's harder. She lost her mom about a year ago, and she was holding on to some things that she wanted to give her mom. And she had, you know, the extra mail key to her mom's mailbox, and she had her mom's name tag from a volunteer organization and things like that. So some things are harder to get rid of, and it's so nice to have somebody there with you who actually cares about you in the process to help you make decisions like that about really sentimental things that maybe you do want to keep some of them, but most of them it's just because we feel like getting rid of those things dishonor the person's memory.
True.
And so I just asked her, you know, will you still remember your mom if you get rid of this name tag? Well, of course I will. You know, do you have other things that remind you of her that are more special than that? Well, of course I do. Those 2 little figurines that you saw in the cabinet, those were from her mom, and those were the things that she kept. So it's really helpful to have somebody go through the process and help you through those stuck points.
Wow, you know what? That was huge, because I'm thinking about, grief, and that's something I'm very not passionate about, people grieving, but helping people through grief and the death and dying process and what. And you know what? I almost want to give that lady a hug, because to be able to let go of the name tag, especially after a year later. So I'm going to say you deserve a huge pat on the back for walking her through it and being there with her, and for her to be able to make those decisions. Wow, that's a fantastic job, because Margie's Z or Z, depending if you're in Canada or the US, says, yikes, I thought the before was great too. I did too. I didn't think it was that bad. And then it didn't look like, when you think somebody needs to declutter, if you're, a cabinet, you picture in your mind, oh yeah, stuff's falling out all over the place. And it didn't look so disorganized, but wow, what a huge difference after.
Yeah, it's not that it looks that bad. And when I was doing my kitchen, it's not like I had cabinets overflowing, but I realized that there was this huge intersection between my kitchen and my mother, because a lot of the time I spent with my mother was in the kitchen, preparing meals, doing dishes, all of that stuff. And I realized that I was holding on to dishes and bakeware and things like that because that's what my mother did and that's what my mother had. And it was about taking everything out and choosing what I wanted for myself instead of continuing to hold on to what my mother wanted for me. And one thing that I found was that I really appreciate the aesthetics of seeing dishes that nest well together. So I have a baking dish that is stoneware, and then I have another one that sits nicely inside of it that is teal, and I have another one that sits nicely inside of it that's blue. And it's beautiful to look at. And looking at beautiful things calms me. And so, like you say, the other cabinet wasn't that bad, but when you see the after picture, it's so calming to look at it,
It
you
is.
know, and we kind of joked that they were just going to sit there with that cabinet open for a couple of days and look at how beautiful and peaceful it is.
But I do that too, because the other thing I've been trying to do so it's not so overwhelming is to pick a small job. Like that wasn't a big job, that
Yeah,
cabinet. Emotionally it
right.
was, but it
Hmm.
wasn't a huge job. So you're not going to have a full day of all you're doing is cleaning, 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 decluttering, decluttering. So that's what I've been
Right.
trying to do, for example, is pick a small area, go through. And I have not read Marie Kondo's book. I've heard so much about it. So obviously I need to give it a shot. And I don't have time usually to read books, but I like audiobooks, and I'm sure I can find one that's on an
Mm,
audiobook. But I
I'm
think
sure.
I always wondered why, because you've heard this phrase, we all have, if you know who Marie Kondo is, does this spark joy? And you just explained it so beautifully. Because I thought that's a weird thing to ask people, but I guess I could see why. Does this make you happy? Until you explained it doesn't ask you all the other questions that we might ask ourselves, and it would stall you thinking, well, no, this does this for me, or this does that, or I spent a lot of money, or I did this. So she knew what she was doing.
Yeah, she really did. And I identified with it so much when I was going through my closet
Mhm.
because it wasn't, you're not asking yourself, does this fit? Or
Yeah.
will I wear this?
Hmm.
Or, you know, do I need this?
Hmm.
Or do I have one just like it? You're asking yourself if it sparks joy. And now my closet is only full of clothes that I love to wear, not clothes that I just are there and I put them on and whatever. It's like, I'm excited to walk into my closet and choose clothing every day. And I
Hmm.
don't do laundry anymore. Now I have a ritual for caring for my clothes.
Hmm.
And I take the time to hold them and feel the fabrics and fold them properly and hang them properly and steam them. Steaming clothes is so cathartic for me. It's like such a beautiful result.
Hmm.
And so I think we can find a lot of meaning in establishing rituals for ourselves rather than doing chores. You know, when we think of it, change our mind just a little bit to think of it a little bit differently, it changes the way that we do those everyday things. And the everyday things are what take up the majority of our life. And I think it's why so many people are dissatisfied with their lives, is because they keep looking forward to some future event or some future time or some trip or some promotion or some big relationship event or something like that.
Or
And we
material,
fail to
material.
find, yes,
Mhm.
and we fail to find joy in the small details of our lives, like having a morning routine that's the same, pouring a cup of tea, looking at the flowers, watering the flowers, getting dressed, like doing dishes, doing chores. These things can be filled with joy,
Mhm.
but we have to change our minds about them in order to experience those things. And so when people talk about, yeah, my life is pretty mundane, it's pretty boring, I didn't do anything today that I really enjoyed, how sad is that?
It is sad.
Because I got up this morning and I enjoyed every single thing that I did today, even the stuff that I it previously thought of as a chore, like feeding the dogs and doing the dishes. These are things that have to be done every day, so we might as well find a way to find joy in them. And now that I have a peaceful home, I have more space in my brain to find joy in things.
So is that the main reason? I'm just asking because I know there's going to be people listening to this going, there's no way I'm going to find joy in doing any of this stuff. But really, no, but there is realistically, and I know you're really down to earth. There are going to be people that are going to say that. And the thing is it part of just the healing journey as well? So we're decluttering our living space to a place that we love, including, like you said, the clothing that we really, really love. And like you said, you found a way to care for your clothing that you really, really enjoy. So you've really, to me, it sounds like you've been able to not only practice gratitude, but also really looking at a way, if you will, looking outside the box, but even like there isn't a box. So, like before, it was laundry, but now you've discovered that you really love to steam clothes. So, you're starting to find things like joy in everything. Or how would you word that? Because I don't want to, word things the way you look at it. But for most people listening to this, as well as I do, they're going to go, yeah, right. but no, but that can happen. But I think it's about shifting belief systems and the way that you look at things. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
One of the first things that we lose when we experience trauma or heartache or pain is our ability to be creative. And I don't just mean paint a picture or sing a song. I
Mhm,
mean the ability to solve problems creatively, to
mhm,
come up with solutions that are different than something we've experienced before.
mhm.
And so going through the healing process and healing from trauma allowed me to literally have the space in my brain to think of things in a different way and to see things in a different way. And I will also say this is a product of me leaving high demand religion, where literally my entire life was focused on doing things on a checklist so that I could have a beautiful afterlife. And
Right.
there are so many people, my parents included, unfortunately, who focus so much on the afterlife that they forget to live this one.
Yeah.
And for me, believing that this life is the only life that we get, I
Mhm,
want to savor every moment of it. And I want to make everything that I do meaningful, even laundry, even running, even putting gas in my vehicle. I
mhm.
want everything to mean something and to be able to savor it and enjoy it and get to the end of the day and list all of the things that I felt joyful about. While I'm standing there putting gasoline in my car, the wind was blowing and it felt so beautiful on this hot day. And I looked up in the tree and there was a bird sitting there. And I thought about what she was doing out there looking for food for her little family who was back in a little nest somewhere that she built. What a beautiful life that is.
Mhm.
You know, I'm able to have the margin to look at these things in a different way. And I know that when you've gone through trauma, it feels like this.
It does, yeah. Mhm.
And that's what I want to help people do, is to take the blinders off, to get them out of those dark spaces so that they can actually enjoy their existence, because they didn't deserve the trauma that happened to them and they didn't deserve the feelings that they're feeling now. And if I can use my pain to help someone else relieve their pain, I think that is the highest and best thing that I can do with my life.
I love that because, like I said, I know you're seeing it, and to be able to help people is a wonderful thing. But there's so many
Yeah.
people that don't even know where to start. But so for
Yeah.
people listening here, this is the type of coaching that you're doing with people. And before we went live, you were talking about, like, there was a huge gamut of people you were able to help, like not just with loving your space. Like I think you'd mentioned somebody, um they were in a position to hire people. You were able to help coach them with that, right?
Yeah, it was somebody who has their own business and they recognize that they're not a people person and they're not really good at seeing whether or not somebody is good at a skill.
Hmm.
And so, he and I worked together to develop a criteria of what he wanted in this individual that he was going to be working closely with. And so I went and interviewed people for him, and I
Hmm.
found him three candidates that I thought were going to be really good. And I visited with him about them, and I said, here are what I think the problems potentially could be with you working with these people. And then he was able to go and interview them himself. So I basically kind of took the field and narrowed it down for him.
Right.
And then also I was able to say to the candidates, I want you to realize if you come to work for this person, he's not a people person,
Hmm.
and he's probably going to seem abrasive sometimes. If you know that going in and you can handle that, you'll be successful at the job.
Hmm.
Rather than him trying to go out and talk to people, rub people the wrong way, hire the wrong person, and then his business suffers, his livelihood suffers, and it's a bad situation. So if you are doing anything that has to deal with people, I can help you with that. And we're all doing things with people
Yeah.
all day, every day.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a good way to put it in a nutshell. Kind of covers everything, because there's very few people that don't deal with other people. Don't get me wrong, there are people that, elderly people especially, or people that are ill sometimes, that don't get to be around people the way they want to. But most people deal with other people in one way or another. I love it.
hmm
So
yeah.
we got We got about 25 minutes left. I'm going to read just Debbie's comment here, and then I was going to ask you if you want to let us know too about what's coming up for season 2 with your podcast, and talk a bit more about your book and anything else you want to talk about. You got stuff you want to share? I don't set up an agenda with people before I talk to them, because I really love people and I love to hear your story, and I love to hear, like, how did you get to the space that you're in, that you're here to talk about, basically. And we had lots to talk about from last time, and I'm hoping I can have you on again in the future, because I really enjoy talking with you. So Debbie Schmuley says, I received some of my dad's things after he passed. I'm sorry for the passing of your dad, Debbie. And she said, and instead of selling them or hanging on to them, I've been gifting them to friends who have said they like them. It feels more honoring. Here, I'll highlight it. Sorry. It feels more honoring to him that someone will enjoy it and know it came from him. I think that's a beautiful sentiment. Really great.
Yeah, it is. I love that.
So you're starting the podcast again. Is it next Wednesday?
Yeah, I mean, so I've been doing my episode releases. I'll release an episode on YouTube on Wednesday, and then I'll have a live Q&A afterwards for my channel members and subscribers. And season 1 was all just me by myself. Season 2 is duets. And I actually did an interview with my daughter last week that was just, it wasn't really part of the podcast season. It was just something we decided to do because the topic was timely. We talked about her experience as an LDS missionary, and it was wonderful to have her on there and share her experiences and just to have a great conversation with her. It was fun for me. And then my next few interviews are going to be really interesting. I'm having on my episode this week is with John Larson, who is a farmer and a philosopher and also a podcaster, and happens to be a former Mormon, although he is now a secular Buddhist. And so his journey and transformation is really interesting. And he has a lot to say about scarcity mentality and about healing the planet in the future and things like that. So we had a great conversation. And
so
then,
what is scarcity? So you don't want scarcity mentality for people listening. What is that sort of?
It's just a mindset where we always think that we don't have enough.
Okay.
Like when I go to Costco and I buy, 28 rolls of toilet paper because I think I'm going to run out, but when you spread that to all parts of your life, it can be really problematic,
Okay, good.
So that's next week. And then September is Unalive Awareness Month. I don't know if you want me to say the word because of YouTube. So I'm just trying to be careful of being respectful of not getting you shut down.
So SUICIDE awareness, right?
Right. Yes. And so I am doing an episode where I interview my EMDR therapist, and we talk about the plan that I put in place to survive because I chose to live. And so I wanted to have a plan for when I was feeling those dark feelings. And I have him on, and we talk about strategies for how to prevent it and how to help people that you love who are going through that as well. So that's going to be the next 2 episodes. And then also in the season, I interview an atheist spiritual director, and we talk about existential fear and leaving religion. And then I also have another pair of podcasters on called Zelf on the Shelf, who I went on their show a while back and I absolutely loved them. They are millennials who are just incredibly intelligent and hilarious. One of them is from the UK, and we have just an awesome conversation about body shame and lots of other things. So I have a wide variety of things coming up, but always, it always is in the realm of, healing and finding healthier ways to relate to people and healthier ways to think about the things in our everyday life. And actually, I'm going to be on Surviving the Survivor again on Wednesday.
Are you talking about this?
Yeah,
I didn't bring it up. Because we chose not to focus on it. But are you going on Surviving the Survivor to address that part, or the work that you're doing?
Well, we're going to be talking about the Corey Richins case.
Okay.
And the reason is because she has an LDS background, and sometimes they bring me on to comment on what that religion, the dynamics of that religion and how it plays into the commission of crimes sometimes. But, you know, it's, I don't mind talking about Lori and her case because it is part of how I got to where I am right now.
Well, we might have to start at
because
the beginning for people then. So I don't know. I'll let you
Yeah, sure.
share what you want to share. How about that?
You sure? So I wrote my book and I was doing my coaching and I was starting to develop that business. Probably in around 2021 is when that started happening. And so Lori already had been arrested and was in prison. But
Some people may not
when
know who
her
Lori is what I meant. So we may
Oh,
have to.
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
So Lori Vallow Daybell is my first cousin. We grew up together. We lived together in Austin for a little while, and she was a bridesmaid in my wedding. So we were close for a long time. And then she was arrested for the unaliving of her two children and her husband's wife. Now she's getting ready to go on trial for the unaliving of her husband, her fourth husband. And so she's been through one trial already. She was tried and convicted. She is serving 3 consecutive life sentences for those crimes. And then her co-conspirator and husband, Chad Daybell, was sentenced to death in Idaho this last spring for his role in those crimes. And then she's going to be on trial in February of 25 for the death of Charles Vallow, who was her fourth husband.
Yeah.
So when her first trial started, I started for the first time to listen to media surrounding the crimes in the trial. I hadn't really listened to much of it before. And I kept hearing people talk about Lori and say that she was such a good mom and she was a cheerleader and she was the cupcake mom and she led the children in singing at church and she was so wonderful. And then she met Chad and then she snapped. And I was like, no, that's not what happened. That was not my experience with her. Of course, I didn't realize that when I was spending time with her, I didn't realize how toxic her patterns of behavior were because I hadn't done my own healing work at that point. But
you didn't have any exposure.
having,
you didn't have any exposure to
Yeah.
anybody really outside LDS Church, right? Not that we're saying people are all like Lori Vallow. I'm not saying that, but recognize some toxic traits.
I mean, right. And I mean, I thought those things were normal because that's what I grew up with. So once now being on this side of the healing journey and having a hair trigger for recognizing really harmful manipulative behavior, now I can look back on my time with her and realize that she was manipulating me a lot of the time and that she was manipulating other people and she was very controlling. So I actually reached out to Justin Lum, who was the main reporter at Fox 10 Phoenix, who was covering her case. He was the one I saw more than anybody else and had been there since the beginning. So I reached out to him and told him what I thought about it. And he interviewed me. And that kind of started it. I started getting contacted by news outlets. I was contacted by Lauren Matthias of Hidden True Crime and told her my story. She had me on. And then I went on Mormon Stories to talk about leaving the church and the intersection of all of this religious fervor with Lori and her group. And that's just kind of how people got to know me. And so when I launched my podcast back in April, I had already been on, I don't know, 50, I don't know how many podcasts I had been on and interviews I had done at that point. So people already kind of knew who I was at that point. So when I started my channel, I got a lot of subscribers that came for family tea, shall we say. And now the people who are there have stayed for the healing. And so it's been kind of a crazy, but also wonderful journey.
Well, I had we just addressed it the first time you came on very quickly. And I said, we're not going to talk about that because although you were incredible on Joel's show, it was what was coming out of your mouth and the way of the healing and the wisdom and all this stuff. That's what I wanted to talk to you about because, I mean, again, I appreciate you updating people. I didn't even bring it up today. I thought if it came up, it came up because I'm more interested, exactly like you said. People may have come from the true crime background, but they are staying with you because of the healing and the teaching. And you really have come a long way. But I don't know what it is lately, if it's just everything seems to be rising to the surface, that people that have been doing dark things. But I mean, we've got Corey Richens, yes, that story. Then we've had Ruby Frankie and Jody Hildebrand, and that's how I found Mormon podcasts. Is I was listening to the niece of Jody Hildebrand, and they were part of the
Yeah,
LDS church.
Jesse.
Jesse, yeah. And that's a long show, but wow, I couldn't. So when you mentioned the Mormon podcast, I went, yeah, I know what one that is.
Well, I have to show you a really fun connection. So after that episode, I reached out to Jesse because I had been thinking about getting a tattoo. And at the time they were working in Seattle at
Okay.
the Electric Cobra. And so I reached out to them and went to Seattle and got a
Oh,
tattoo.
wow. Don't you hate where it's there? Like you can't. I drew my own, but Jesse, I know, is a tattoo artist now. And good for you. So is that your first tattoo?
It is. And it was such a wonderful experience
Mhm.
because Jesse and I have so much in common. Our stories are very similar. And we were able to talk to each other about things that we can't say in our interviews that were common between us. And those similarities of our stories, it was really healing to have that conversation with somebody who has been there and who knows what it feels like to be in that space. It was healing for both of us, I think.
I just wanted to hug her after that interview. What is it
Yeah.
called in the Mormon? I remember where I can't remember the title.
It's called Mormon Stories.
Mormon Stories, yes. Because I was looking, she'd come up on a news, um, I think a news thing somebody had sent me or I'd seen, and I went, oh, I need to hear more about her story. And I just wanted to just hug her. She's just such a sweet girl. You ladies have been through so much, and I think it's really inspirational and I thank you for the stories that you're sharing, Jesse shared, because people can realize that even though you can be in a very dark space and you've gone through a lot of trauma, you have to make the choice, I think, to stand up for yourself and want that healing. But there's a lot that can be done. And I think you are a testament of it, would you say?
Well, I feel incredibly lucky because when I think about Lori and me, she and I went through a lot of similar things too. And we both acted in ways that we were trying to get our needs met, our emotional needs met.
Mhm.
And the dysfunction, we went in opposite directions. And it's hard for me to think about because I think I just feel lucky that I was able to go in a different direction instead of letting my shadow side take over. I
Mhm.
chose to heal it. And I don't know, I don't, I feel in some ways like I can't take credit for that. And then on the other side of it, I mean, I have done a lot of work and that I do take credit for. But I
You
also
made the
just feel really
decision.
lucky.
You made the decision to
Yeah.
to want better for yourself. And I think that that's where it
Yeah.
starts. And I'm hoping that somebody that maybe needs to hear it, like you went
Yeah.
through some pretty, like we didn't dig into it. And I encourage you guys and ladies, gentlemen, anybody out there that's listening to pick up a copy of Megan. Why do I keep saying Megan? Oh, I hate when people mispronounce my name, and I've done it to you all night, Megan. I'm so sorry. To pick
It's
up
okay.
Megan's book, because you made that choice. And what I'm hoping somebody listening to this that is in a very dark space and feels like life, there's nothing much maybe left in life, or that it can't get better, that it can, but you have to make that decision to want to fight for yourself and to make, all you got to do is take the step, right? And find the right help. There's help out there. Am I right about that, or is there anything you'd
Yeah.
like to?
And yes, Yeah, and to not give up, because it is really hard to find a good, competent therapist. And I did an episode on how to hire a therapist on my show, and that is one of the things I help coaching clients with as well.
Okay.
But I went through a few therapists that were not great, and I didn't feel like I was making progress. And so if you're working with someone and you feel like you're not making progress, the hardest thing to do is to say, I don't think this is working and I need to find someone else. The hardest thing to do is to start over and tell a new person your whole story. And I get that. I had to do it several times, and it was not so worth it to find somebody that you resonate with and who is really, really good at their job.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole insurance thing comes into play and all of that as well. And, you know, I started a nonprofit organization to help people pay for therapy
Oh,
services.
wow.
It's not up and running yet, because I just haven't had the time and the space and the
Sure.
money to do all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But it will eventually. But I think just that's my main message to anybody who's going through traumatic things, is just don't give up. Just keep doing the next thing that you need to do to heal. And some of that is just finding resources. And if you can't find a therapist, there are so many good therapists on YouTube that are creating free content.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, you can use the 988 hotline. They do text and talk 24/7 for
Mm-hmm.
anybody who is, having dark feelings or dark thoughts. It is 100% free. No, they will not send police to your door unless they think that you're going to harm someone else or yourself. And so it's just it's so important to be proactive about looking for resources that work for you, because it's going to be somewhat different for everybody.
I'm hoping one of these days, I don't know if you'll be able to do that, is to put that out there, in whether it's an hour long course session, whatever, because none of us, even though I come from as a nursing background, like, I had no idea. Like, when I started, I had 6 weeks of counseling. And when I was married to my first husband, and it's different in Canada and the US or anywhere else around the world. But most places, you either got to go through insurance or pay out of pocket. I know we do here. It's not
Mm-hmm.
covered by our insurance in any way, like with our OHIP, it's called, where I live in Ontario. A lot of things aren't covered. But I think I had two different therapists, and I could not believe the difference in the two of them at that
Yeah.
time. This was back in my 30s. So I love that you just said that you teach people how to look for a therapist, because that's not something that you look up or whatever. You've been there. So to be able to guide people in what you're looking for, I think that's really important.
Yeah, it is absolutely a job interview. You are interviewing someone for the job of caring for your mental health. And so you have to ask a lot of questions up front. You should absolutely know their credentials, and they should be able to share with you the people that they've worked with before. Have they been successful? Do they get better? How soon do they get better? And then when you do start working with someone, there should be some criteria for, you should start feeling better within a few sessions or within a few months or whatever the case is. Um, I don't like the idea in a lot of therapy clinics where they think that you're just always going to be in therapy and you're always going to need somebody to talk
Yeah,
to.
I hear you.
My EMDR therapist said, my goal is that you're never going to need me again.
That's what
And
you want to hear.
exactly.
Yeah.
And even with everything that I went through, which was a lot, I was able to, in about 18 months or so, work through the majority of all of my trauma and then just go for touch-ups afterwards.
Hmm.
And I, it's been a really long time since I've had an actual session with him, but obviously we connected on the episode that I did together. And the point is that in therapy, you should be learning the tools that you need, that if you ever have a similar experience, you'll be able to use those tools again. And I think a lot of, especially SA victims, live in fear that it's going to happen again, because it is really common for SA victims to have recurring experiences with other offenders. I think a lot of them live in fear that they're always just going to be a victim, but it's possible to develop the skills that you need to identify those people and to exit those situations in healthy ways, and to exit faster and to recognize sooner when you're not being treated well. And I think that's the thing that comes up for me more often. It's not that I am free from toxic people in my life. It's just that I recognize them very quickly now. And I have this much tolerance for any of that. And I'm able to get out of the situation very quickly now instead of
I
staying stuck there all the time.
I just love it. We are out of time. This always goes by so quick. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm hoping I can have you back on sometime in the near future again, because you were so helpful. I want to give a shout out to your mod, Ashley. Ashley, I
Yeah,
have
she's
met.
awesome.
She is awesome. She's posted your book link. She's greeted everybody. Ashley, you're an amazing mod. I don't think that's the only mod I think I've seen of yours that's on here. I hope I didn't miss anybody, but she's amazing. So I wanted to thank her, because you made our life, at least it gave us the peace of mind we could sit and talk, right? We didn't have to worry about anything.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
what
And
have
I
you got?
will
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
go. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, let me know what you got coming up. Again, remind people where to
Oh,
buy your book, how to get a hold of you to hire you for some coaching services and things like that. So go ahead. Sorry.
yeah. So my website is third-verse.com, as in this is the third verse of my song. And there's a little tab there for coaching. And if you go there, there's a link where you can sign up for a free 15 to 30-minute phone call, because I never want to charge somebody for charge money to somebody before we've even had a conversation, because I want to make sure that I'm the right person for them too. And
Mhm.
so I always want to visit with people. So you can visit with me free for 15 or 20 minutes by signing up on that little link there. I have specific hours that are just for those phone calls. And then, once we get in touch, we just email and we go from there. So that's where people can find me for coaching, and other resources are on my website. And then my social media, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube are all third_verse. And then Wednesday, I've got my Surviving the Survivor episode, followed by my podcast episode, and followed by a live after that. And then
Oh my
every
gosh, you got a
Sunday,
big day.
yeah. And then every Sunday, I do a sort of like weekly motivational kind of setting intentions for the week. And we try to focus on a topic that we talk about. And then channel members and subscribers get to say, this is my intention for the week, or this is what I need support with, or whatever. And we just have a nice discussion. And it's a great way to end the Sunday scaries and go into the week feeling good about what's coming up.
I think you are wonderfully amazing, and I'm so glad that we got to connect, because I know you've helped a lot of people that
Oh, thanks.
usually tune into the Angel Rock that maybe didn't hear of you before, and I really appreciate. So I strongly encourage anybody out there, please check out Megan's book, her coaching services, her podcast. I'm telling you, you're going to be better for it. And I'm going to try and have her back on. I don't know when, because it's already almost September already, and now the busy season starts. But one of these days in the near future, I'm going to ask her to come back on. I want to thank everybody that tuned in from Megan's channel here too. It was so nice to have you here. I also want to let you know, if you ever want to get a hold of me, anybody out there, you can get a hold of me right now on facebook.com/the Angel Rock. I am working on a domain name website. I am hoping October is coming quick, but I was thinking it was initially going to be October. I'm trying to aim for it. I am going to be putting out a teaching course of my own about how to access your own gifts and working with energy, meditation, things like that. When I have that, we'll be going to domain name. But otherwise, the quickest and easiest way to get a hold of me usually is Facebook Messenger, but I'm on every single social media platform you can think of under Laura Lee Potvin or the Angel Rock, so you can always message me there too. And if you do want to get a hold of me, I forgot to tell me why you would. I do readings. I also do mediumship. I do crystal Reiki, which has been quite life-changing for people that have had it done before. I always say it's not me. I'm just the male person connecting you to that type of energy. I also do teaching and mentoring. I have two groups on Facebook, Paranormal University for all things paranormal, and the Angel Rocker Tribe for more spiritual. Also, don't forget, Thursday, David and I will be back, David Hansel, with The Thing at the Foot of the Bed at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, talking all things spooky. We're starting to get into spooky season. We basically talk about whatever you all want to talk about. So you got questions about what happens after we leave this planet, and the life is over. We talk about our ghost reel, whatever you guys want to talk about. We talk about, could be spiritual, could be energy, could be paranormal, and we'd love to have you. We also have a group on Facebook called The Thing at the Foot of the Bed with Laura Lee Potvin and David Hansel. We're getting close to 200 people. It's a newer group. We post links in there. You guys can post pictures, ask questions, show topics. And because we show a lot of different video clips and we talk about a lot of different things, I post the links after the show in there. But when we get to 200, David and I are going to start going live in there and doing, free little conversations. Sometimes we'll do readings, whatever you need. So I want to thank you once again, Megan, for being here. The thunderstorm is just starting. It held off, everybody. I hope it held off for you, Megan. Did it?
It did. Yeah, it did. Thanks so much for having me. I love being here with you.
I love having you on, and I know my audience loves you too. So we'll have her back on, I promise, everybody. So sending you all much love and light. We will see you on Thursday, and I will be back on the Angel Rock. I always forget to check who's coming next week, but it's going to be an awesome guest, I promise. Okay, we'll see you all next week. Thanks, everyone. Stay safe. Take care.